Howdy, howdy, lads, MBs, and lasses. If you live in the Harris Branch neighborhood in Austin, Texas, my name's Anthony, and I'm your neighbor. This is a monthly update from the Harris Branch Residential HOA Board meeting that occurred in October. These meetings happen on the third Thursday of every month. You can see up on the screen the Zoom link for you to come and participate. You don't have to say anything. You can simply sit there and spectate. Or if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to bring them to the board and they'll do their best to answer them or at least get back to you after the meeting once they've had time to research your questions. These meetings occur at 6:30 and go to 8 p.m. Sometimes they go longer. However, you're always welcome to join anytime during that time frame and leave at any time you feel like it. 1. Call meeting to order, establish quorum. Of the 5 board members, only 4 of them were there, Vanessa Sillis being the one board member who's been absent from many of these meetings at this point. However, with the 4 members who were there, they were able to establish quorum. Then, skipping to number 3, approve prior August meeting minutes. They were able to accomplish this. 2, the homeowner forum. There wasn't any discussion on that piece. So we moved on to number 4, the treasurer's report. This is the part of the meeting where the treasurer will go over expenses and the budget. He'll talk about the operating cash and the funds that we have sitting in our bank or our reserve fund. Some of the things that Jorge noted was the legal expenses to Neiman Hire, collections and attorney time ended up being $19,020. The budget is $6,617 under the yearly budget. This is in reference to the more aggressive stance that the board asked Neiman and Hire to have when it comes to going after those homeowners or accounts that have outstanding balances. There is also mention of the $2,300 Fencecrete of America repair wall. This was at Sterling Bridge, and as well as the pool fence. These were broken fences that needed to be repaired. There was a $5,600 UNRU invoice for the amenity center and the fitness repair, light bulbs. They installed the AED, which is defibrillator. This expense also added in the janitorial expense, and that was something that they needed to recode into a different bucket for the spreadsheet. There was $15,677 approval for the tree replacement on Farmhaven. We lost a lot of the non-native invasive trees during Uri. I've discussed this in previous videos. Luckily, the board has decided to move forward with replacing those, so hopefully we can get a little bit of reprieve when we're out there walking on those sidewalks underneath the shade of these replacement trees. $4,287 from Farmers Insurance. There was 2 invoices for monthly. Good suggest going to the yearly payment. Anyone who has insurance knows you can normally save some money if you turn it into a lump sum payment as opposed to breaking out over a 6-month payment twice a year. Finally, there was a $6,224 water bill. This was abnormally high due to a leak at the pool. It was found in the back section of the pool area by the Sunscapes. At this point, my understanding is that leak has been fixed, so that bill should be much lower next month. 5, the President's report. Most of this is going to get fleshed out in the other reports below, so we'll skip on to number 6, the Community Management Report with Raquel. She had mentioned that the pool room repairs, they have been shopping around to find the best cost coverage. I believe this has been in relation to the pumps that have been having issues, as well as the levels of chemicals in the pool that many of you experienced with the closures due to the city inspector and the back and forth between the lifeguard company and the pool maintenance company that the board had to deal with. Unfortunately, that is still ongoing in the sense that they are still shopping around for a good company that could possibly move in and handle all of that. The question of the $64,000 to $69,000 for lifeguards, the board, of course, like I mentioned just a second ago, would like to use a different company in that sense. I am still unsure what the status is on just simply allowing the pool to be a swim at your own risk, something that many other neighborhoods have been able to do. However, it comes down to the classification of the pool. It has now been quite a few months, I think, since the board has asked Raquel to figure out that classification so that way they can decide on whether or not they need to continue having lifeguards or if they're able to simply do a swim at your own risk, allowing homeowners to enjoy the pool throughout the year possibly, and with better hours to accommodate those of us who are working during the week and are very busy on weekends. There was an issue at the dumpster at the mini center. Seems like Waste Management had damaged the gate when they were pulling in. Waste Management, of course, paid for the damages, and that gate has been repaired. There was a dog park complaint that came in regards to the cracking of the soil out there in the dog park. Now, if many of you aren't aware, that dog park was never officially supposed to be in. That was built kind of under secrecy from the city. Luckily, nothing has happened in the sense that the city has come out and said, hey, why is this here? So it's been able to operate for the past years without having any issues. However, on that front, due to the complete clearing of all the trees that were there previously, there is severe erosion issues. This is something that I brought up to the board many years ago, honestly, my first year on the board, when I started to try and plant those trees that are currently in the dog park. One of the biggest issues with the dog park there is that we don't have a source of water run out there. So what I had done, and this is something that you can also consider in your landscaping, when you plant saplings or smaller trees, they are more resilient and require a lot less resources, water, mulch, fertilizer, things of that nature, than larger trees. So as a smaller tree grows up, many times it can adapt to the system that it's in versus buying a big tree from a box plant store or a local nursery that has been in pristine conditions the majority of its life, and then you put it into the harsh, terrible clay soils that we have out here, and it has quite a bit of struggle reestablishing itself, oftentimes stunting itself, to the point where sometimes smaller trees will outpace larger trees. Now, the board looked into bringing out soil to dump into these cracks, which of course, that's going to run off as soon as we get a good rain. It's also going to not fix the issue because the issue is there's not enough water retention in that soil, something that a lot of plant life with deep root systems will achieve. However, this was the main reason why I planted the smaller trees out there, is because we didn't want to spend the money to run the water lines out there for the trees. Now, there's been a quote given to us by Sunscapes, and even Sunscapes luckily responded that, yeah, this isn't really going to fix your cracking issue. It's about the moisture control in that soil. So what you need is a robust root system that's out there to hold that soil from high winds, to protect it from baking by giving it shade, and that will contain that water on the property in its root system and slowly release it over time, preventing the major cracking that we're seeing out there. Now that another homeowner's brought this up, maybe the board is going to take this a little bit more seriously and go and do some more trees out there, possibly with gator bags, or maybe they'll finally run some water out there so that way we can start getting much better shade and better control of that soil. Final piece on the dog part, the gates, of course, because they are sunk in concrete posts, are susceptible to that same soil expanding and contracting, so they have a lot of alignment issues as we go through historic droughts and then heavy rains. So that is something that the board is also looking into getting repaired and getting quotes on. There's also been some concerns over the quote-unquote lakes, ponds in our neighborhoods. A lot of the issues with the drought, evaporating majority of that water, the lack of rain that we've been getting has caused a lot of those levels to drop drastically. The pump at the fountain on the Harris Branch Park Lake, the one closest to the Harris Branch Amenity Center, that has been broken for a while. The issue has been, of course, the supply chain, the socioeconomic system we set up here in America when it comes to where we're sourcing our materials has caused immense delays for a specific part to get that fixed. That part, however, has arrived. The company that runs our pond equipment is Aquatic Features. They are going to be putting that part into the pump and testing it outside of the pond. And then once they can confirm that that part actually fixed the pump, they will then go out and install it so the fountains will be back on if they're not already back on, assuming that that part did resolve it here in the near future. 7, the committee reports. A, neighborhood representatives, Gary Belcher. Again, if you would like to be a community rep, please reach out to either Gary or Raquel. This is just simply a homeowner who keeps a thumb on the pulse of the neighborhood and gives feedback up to a member on the board to then discuss with the board entirely. Over in the Harris Branch area, there has been cable pulling. My understanding is that the cable puller was AT&T that pulled this fiber, which is great news for the rest of us who are really excited about getting more than 1 gigabit internet. However, there is a lot of debris left around, and homeowners are complaining that that has not been picked up, i.e. cable spools and markers that they use to indicate where they were going to pull the line. There was some concerns over the pool at the gate. This was left open, something that the board has been looking into beefing up as far as ensuring that the gate is not so easily opened by force. Additional issue brought up by the homeowners, something that has been an issue since the beginning of building out here, are the roads. These roads, of course, are also placed on top of the unfortunate clay soil that expands and contracts, and that issue gets exacerbated as we go through the climate crisis with extended droughts and then heavy rains. So there are a lot of issues on our roads where they are buckling, bowing, all sorts of issues where they're cracking, and it's getting worse. These will continue to be an issue for our neighborhoods into the foreseeable future, and so best we can do at this point is start to put in canopies that can cover a lot of the roads. Think of the European roads where they have trees on either side to help reduce heat and help that concrete/asphalt not be exposed to so much heat during the day, as well as creating better lawns in our front yards and backyards to help reduce the runoff from the heavy rains when they do come. The best things you can start doing is to start considering placing rain barrels on your property to help water your lawn for free, save our drinking water for actual drinking. You can also consider doing xeriscaping on the lawn so that way water is not just shooting off it into the spillways or the streets, and this will also help with your foundation as well. There were a lot of praises for the garage sale signs. I also agree they look very good and are quite easily read from the road, so hopefully there was a lot of good traffic with that, and we'll continue to see an increase in traffic through the neighborhood as we continue to do these garage sales throughout the year. There is additional requests for updates on the ongoing progress for the Harris Branch HOA website. This is still in progress. Raquel showed a few things that they had done on it. However, it is not complete at this time. B, the fence committee. Of course, Martin has already gotten the bag. He was able to convince the board to spend a lot of money on our fences, and he has not been back since he got his committee and got the funding approved for all the staining and repairs to fences along the thoroughfares. D, the amenity center expansion that the Cooper termination. Mike talked about this. The termination letter was sent to Cooper. This has kind of been handed over to Goodwin at this point. They're going through the punch list for the certification of occupation, and then they're going to give the board a proposal, and hopefully at that point, the board will be able to move on without Cooper, who has kind of dropped the ball on us when it comes to the finalization of the amenity center expansion. E, communications. This kind of ties back up into what I talked about in the community reports. Raquel and Vanessa are working on the Harris Branch neighborhood website. This is going to be an external and internal website for homeowners. They provided a Word document with changes that they wanted to do to the board. They have done some edits to the links on the site. They showed those on the screen during the meeting. At this point, there's not much of a difference in what was there previously and what is there now. However, if you're looking for an easy way to stay up to date with what's going on with the board, simply hit the little notification button down in the right-hand corner. It looks like a bell, or hit subscribe. That way, anytime I post an update video, these normally are posted once a month, and then on top of that, I'll do videos for issues that the neighborhood is experiencing and would like to have an answer or insight into. You'll get a notification every time one of these videos is uploaded, and it's a little bit easier to stay up to date with than actually attending the meetings that can go on for quite a few hours. I'm going to jump back up here really quickly to see architectural change, the ACC. That's Architectural Change Committee. There was 9 requests, all mainly in review for landscaping requests. Hopefully a lot of you out there are xeriscaping and saving you a lot of time and money. I had talked to one of my neighbors, and they spend over $852 on watering their lawn 1 month. That is a lot of drinking water going to turf grass. Really, really consider xeriscaping your yard so you can save money and it can stay looking good. As well, you'll get a lot of pollinators as well as birds that come through. Much more enjoyable experience to be out in it, especially during the high heat. There's a video I'll link at the end of this one that you can watch to get a little bit more insight into what xeriscaping is and some of the ideas that you can use. A lot of great links will be in that video's description on where you can go to even get refunds/rebates from the city for every square foot of turf grass that you convert into a water-wise landscape. F, the Arts and Crafts Committee. That occurred yesterday, the 29th. There was quite a few updates on it. I talked about it in my previous videos. Hopefully a lot of you made it out to that, and hopefully a lot of you were able to see some of the skills and talents of your neighbors, and maybe even make a few friends or contact and get to know the folks that you live next to. 8, old business updates. A, lights for Meadowview and Lakeview North and South. Those have finally been repaired. This has been an item for the last 3 years. Props to the board for sticking to it and getting it done. B, tennis court locks. These are still pending. As I mentioned before, I think this is sort of a waste of money in the sense that we're trying to do an arms race where we're trying to beef up security and other folks are trying to break down that security so that way they can play on the courts. I've seen a lot of much more affluent neighborhoods than ours and much more less affluent neighborhoods than ours that just have open tennis courts. Something to consider is we're going to be spending nearly $5,600 for the locking system. I wonder how many tennis court nets we could buy with that money in the event that they get damaged and we just need to replace it. My philosophy is always to try and work with the neighbors in the neighborhood and their children and not necessarily work against them and make it harder for them to access our amenities. C, property manager welcoming program and orientation process, waiting on revision from Raquel and Gary Belcher. That's still pending. There was an update on that. D, amenity center rentals. Now, this is something I want to take a quick minute to talk to you about because it's quite concerning. They have those 12 questions. However, in those 12 questions, they have mentioned a $75 fee. 50 of that dollars would be going to the Harris Branch HOA, and $25 of that 75 would be for a deposit that would go back to the homeowner. Something I brought up in the emails during the discussion on this. Of course, I'm still not a board member at this time. I'm only responding to all of these as a concerned homeowner. I will be a board member next year. Is all of us homeowners paid for that amenity center? All of us homeowners pay for the utilities to keep that amenity center running. I'm not entirely sure what the justification is to charge any of us $50 and then take it and put it in the HOA coffers when we're the ones funding that facility. And that's something I mentioned to the board. Unfortunately, Mike kind of brushed it off in email. I think a $75 deposit that will be returned to the homeowner is a great idea, considering that the homeowners paid for the building and are paying for it to stay running. I don't think that the HOA should be charging $50 to homeowners, or honestly any amount to homeowners who have already footed the bill for the building and its maintenance. It simply doesn't make sense to me. E, the Samsung spill into our waterways, killing nearly all the aquatic life. I've talked about this in previous videos. Even when I was on the board when this occurred, I had some pretty driving questions that were sort of brushed aside by Samsung's PR lady, and unfortunately the board didn't really give me much backing when I tried to push for more in the sense of goodwill gestures to the community, especially considering they are a multi-billion-dollar company that has billed in our waterways multiple times. G, social media, Vanessa, Dave, and Raquel. That is still pending. There was no update there. H, the elections. Again, thank you so much to anyone who voted for me. I sincerely appreciate your support. I will be on the board next year along with Valerie, and I will continue to do these videos as well as other videos that pertain to our neighborhood. I, the pool hours extension. This is still pending. Going to be pushing that out to next year. J, the 2023 budget. They went through the budget, and this was quite eye-opening. Raquel had put together the budget with an increase, and she did this with her supervisor at Goodwin, for $536 for the year. This is, I believe, a 10% increase on the current $494. The board requested her to explain why Goodwin suggested this. The answer was because we haven't done it in a while and inflation. Something that is just typical for a corporation and an individual that does not live in the neighborhood is you need to consider inflation and not contribute to it. So raising the cost on homeowners is contributing to the inflation. We need to ensure that costs don't rise, thus helping to combat inflation. Now, something that was very interesting during this conversation is the board asked her to explain it. It seemed as if they hadn't seen the number before. However, when I asked her about if she came up with this on her own or if her supervisor or manager, you know the gig when it comes to corporations, a lot of these aren't necessarily Raquel or the workers' fault. Most of the time, it's management's that's pushing these sorts of ideas on the workers. The board mentioned that they had seen it. So pretty awkward to come out with this number and not immediately shut it down in email discussion when it was first provided to them. However, to their credit, they decided not to go with the increase, especially considering we already operate with a $200,000 plus surplus, and that would bump us up to circa 300 something. So there's just absolutely no justification for it. Still a little questionable or sussy when it comes to this number was provided to the board, and then they didn't immediately shut it down when they first saw it. They brought it to the meeting and even entertained it / discussed it, something that is inconsistent. I am on the master HOA, and recently the Sunscapes, our landscaping company, increased their fees in the middle of the year, stating inflation and cost. And unfortunately, only 2 of us on the board in the master pushed back on that and said, hey, we're not just going to roll over and let a company, take us for granted. We should say we're going to shop around, or you need to extend this all the way out to the end of the year. You need to figure out where you can cut costs. That isn't us, the customer's problem. Unfortunately, the 3 other board members, Mike, David, and Gary, decided that's fine, raise it, no pushback. So these will be much more prevalent as I'm sitting on the board and able to see these things. on the residential HOA, and I'll keep you updated on how members of the board are responding and voting in those instances, because I think that's important information for transparency, so that way you know the type of individual that is leading your community and where their interests lie. 9, new business, the Thistle Hill Monument repair. It has been fixed. However, there are 2 new faults. This is over by the fire station. It's the large concrete wall. This, unfortunately, is another victim of the clay soil out here. So that is something that they're still trying to fix. In my opinion, again, work with things, not against it. Maybe we should consider doing a completely different monument that is not as susceptible to these issues, as they are going to be with us for the rest of our lives. B, the pool pump room repairs. Those are kind of discussed. I believe those have all been completed, or the things that are still on the to-do list are being shopped around for a different company. C, rule adoption. Rule adoption to the rules and regulations. This came up due to some issues with homeowners buying in the neighborhood and not having inspections. I'm assuming this is only happening if you're buying outright with cash. Most lenders do require a inspection be done before they approve you for the loan, so that's the only thing that comes to mind for me. I'm sure if you know anything else, comment below so that way we can be aware of it. And this is going to add a rule that requires an inspection of any property before it's sold. Additional piece in the new business was to ratify the survey project on a wastewater line. The attorneys for the neighborhood have reviewed it. There are 4 votes, 1 abstained. This passed. This is a survey from the city, I believe of Pflugerville, that they want to come through and check out an area that they would like to run a wastewater line that runs through the Harris Branch commercial properties and possibly even through some of the residential properties. Not anywhere close to any homes or anything, but this was approved as just a survey. I believe they'll have to come back to the board at a different time once they decide, or if they decide to run the water line and the approval of easement. There is discussion about an Alamo concrete lien against the residential. This is something I'm not entirely sure where this is, or if this is for the amenity center. There wasn't much details given on that. They are going to offer $2,000 to settle, and then if they don't accept, this is going to go to court. I will hopefully have more details on that next meeting and then update y'all accordingly. Lastly, there is a nonprofit called TreeFolks.org. They are a wonderful resource for our city and our community. I highly recommend going to and volunteering on some of their ready set plants. This is where you simply go out and help them reforest areas that need erosion control along creeks and banks. Something to always remember: you want to keep as many trees and bushes and deep root systems along river and creek beds, so that way during heavy rains they hold that soil there and you don't see that land continue to creep closer and closer to your property as the erosion occurs. I have worked with Tree Folks for many, many years. Even on my dossier, you could see that I have worked with them in our neighborhood. I think we were one of the first residential areas to actually get a planting. This is kind of big news, and they have reached out to the board to do another one. They are planning to do another 100-person volunteer ready set plant. They are planning to plant over 1,000 saplings out there, which is huge. Now, understand, not all 1,000 of those are going to live. What their process is simply put them in, water them once, and leave them. This kind of ties back to putting in the smallest tree first instead of large trees, because then they get to adapt to the area that they're growing in and are much better able to handle the conditions as they arise because they are used to them. They were looking for approval for the Texas TXCC, Texas Conservation Corps, another group I worked with in our neighborhood that has helped us remove Arundodonax, or giant cane, which is a non-native invasive that takes over a lot of our areas. I've talked about that in previous videos, and they are going to come in and cut off some of the lower branches of some of those mesquite trees, so that way volunteers can get to the bank where they need to be planting these 1,000 saplings. This originally was going to be scheduled for December 10th. However, they have now pushed that out to February. I will be sending out an update for everyone on when that is, and I'll even post a link and probably a short video that you can click on it and sign up to volunteer and come out and meet some neighbors and see how the process works, while also helping to beautify the neighborhood. Tree Folks also mentioned that there is a Friends of Harris Branch Creek organization. I'll post the link to them in below. It's the first time I've heard of them, so I'll be reaching out to the individual running that, Rebecca, so hopefully we can coordinate. It's always nice when you have a coalition of homeowners with same interests that are working together with other people to get things done. So I'll post that link below along with the other links that you'll need. That concludes October's month review of the Harris Branch Residential HOA meeting. Again, if you would like to see the meeting minutes, those are posted on Town Square. That link is in the description below. If you'd like to stay up to date with the food trucks that are coming out on Friday, there is a link below to join that Facebook organization. If you'd like to take a part in finding Harris Branch neighborhood lost pets, or your own pet and you have lost it and would like to post for other folks to help you, there's a link to the Lost Pets group in the description below as well. Please join those groups and get to know your neighbors, and hopefully we'll see you around. And with all that being said, y'all stay safe out there. Take care. Bye.